Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
I am a dissident.
Good morning. Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a special morning due edition of the Due Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Guten Morgen.
Good morning. If our voices are a little raspy today, it's because this is our 5th show in 3 days. Wow. What a week. What a week. It's like working in a coal mine here. And my hair's a little fucked up, too. Yeah. I realize now my hair's a little fucked up, too, but that's all right.
Yeah. Your hair is always a little fucked up.
It's always a little fucked up. That's my look. Exactly. Yeah. That's how I do it.
It's your trademark.
That's my trademark. Exactly. That's my thing.
We gotta for the podcast do the Bernie reverse negative thing with your glasses and messed up
and the
hair.
Disheveled hair.
Keaton.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the outline logo. Well, whatever we're doing, it appears we're doing something right. As many of you have noticed, we have crossed 50,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Thank you very much for helping us get there. It's much appreciated. We recently crossed the 9,000 subscriber mark over on Rumble, which is super important as well. But thank you guys very much. My children turn 5 years old tomorrow, and this podcast had its 5th birthday on St. Patrick's Day. That's when I created the Facebook page and the YouTube channel and everything. And we didn't populate the YouTube channel for a few years, really, after that. But that's when we got everything set up. And so 5 years, 50,000 subscribers.
Because you know those business-savvy Jews? We're the other ones.
Yeah, we're the other ones. Well, what do they say? They say it takes 5 years to get a business really going. So I guess we,
Dude, if we had gone to YouTube back then before they changed the algorithm, we'd be fucking forget about it.
Yeah, but that would have taken a lot of time.
Would have taken a lot of time. We didn't really know each other yet.
Yeah. I didn't have time at the time because I had literally twins a few days after we decided to launch the show. I decided to launch the podcast on a friend's, basically the way this whole thing started is I used to have these long conversations with my friend on the phone. We used to talk politics, and he used to say, if you're going to talk about this stuff with me for a couple hours a week, why don't you just figure out a way to record yourself talking about this stuff and put it up as a podcast and see what happens? You have nothing to lose. Worst case, no one will care. And so, that thought kind of percolated in my head for 6-8 months, and then we decided to do it. What really made me decide to do it was the launch of the Bernie campaign, because he launched in late February. And I decided, well, I'm not going to get to volunteer or anything this time because I'm going to have 2 infants to take care of in the house. So what's something I could do from the house that I feel like I'm at least contributing in some way? So that's where that started. And now 5 years later, we hate Bernie, and he has a podcast of his own. Yeah, so there you go.
And we probably have more listeners.
Yeah. Funny how things change, isn't it?
So we did promise when we got to 50,000 we were going to twerk, but we decided to release that as a limited edition DVD.
Yeah.
So if you sign up at Patreon or Locals or Substack right now, you get me and Keaton moving it.
There you go. We'll have to record that over the weekend.
We like to move it.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we're not allowed to play. We like to move it on YouTube. That is copyright
we were
blocked.
gonna twerk right here for you.
Yeah, but that's blocked. They'll take your shit down. They blocked
it. Yep.
Bastards. They blocked our twerk. So there, you can be mad at YouTube, not at us. 606 in the YouTube/Twitter chat, whatever that number represents now in our top corner. 379 over on Rumble. So we got about 1,000 of you folks watching. All in all, thank you all very much for being here this morning. Like I said, this was a quick turnaround. Had an epic post-duopoly show last night, 3.5 hours. That was a lot of fun. So thanks to our friends at RBN for hosting.
Yeah, it
and
was
thanks,
nice
obviously,
getting back
Kit
together.
for joining. Yeah, that was a fun one.
And it looks like for reals, there is going to be an Avengers Endgame style get together around the DNC convention. I'm going to be there. Kit's going to be there. Nick's going to be there. Possibly JD even. We will see.
You mean CJ or JB?
JD.
Oh, Jimmy Dore. Oh, that's right, because he's maybe doing a show that week. Possibly. Got it. Yeah, no, that would be a pretty epic thing. That would be pretty epic. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up in August. We do have one more thing that we want to plug before we start the show today. This was brought to our attention on the Post-duopoly stream last night, but our friend JB at RBN is in a bit of a jam. I can't stand landlords. Now my life is getting turned upside down, and it's deeply distressing. 10 years, never missed a rent payment, never late. I'm at a point where I don't know what to do right now. They want to sell it, meaning the building where he lives, in 60 days. I've always been responsible and diligent. Housing insecurity is a horrible thing. He posted the link to his Cash App in case anybody wants to send some mutual aid his way, and I could not find the tweet with the Cash App link on it, so I thought I made a thing. I thought I made the thing.
I thought you took a picture of it.
No, I did take a picture of it, but I thought I made a banner today. Where the hell is it? I'll make a banner right now of his Cash App link, so if anybody does want to help him out. He's a great guy. He had us on his show way back, so we've known him for a while. Yeah. And he's one of the most genuine guys in this space. And so if you do want to help JB out, that's his Cash App link, James Fauntleroy. Some mutual aid his way would be a great thing to do. Great way to start your Thursday by getting some good karma. It's really amazing. You know, we were talking about this on the show last night. At the top, there should be some regulation where a landlord, especially in this housing market, they should have to give you like 6 months if they're selling the building. Because they don't just decide on a whim to sell the building. They should have to give a tenant at least 6 months. It should really be a year. But whatever. Neoliberal capital hellhole that this country is, 6 months is the bare minimum. Because in order to move, you need, in a lot of places, 3 months worth of rent payments. You need security first month and last month. Who has 3 months worth of rent lying around that they could just come up with in 60 days time? Like, it takes time to save that money if you can at all, right? That you can't get that. You can't just scrape that together in 60 days. So why should a landlord be able to tell you, oh yeah, by the way, in 2 months, you're out of here, which means you're going to have to come up with 3 months worth of cash on hand to give to the next person you rent from. That's ridiculous.
Well, especially now because rents are so insane.
Right.
Back when rents were more reasonable, like, yeah, just move to another place, whatever. It's not like that now. Now, New York is very weird because we have this legacy of when New York was this very left-wing progressive city of rent stabilization. Rent control is very rare because they only had a brief window of that. People who have rent control today are people who are old as dirt, who got one of those original rent controlled apartments in the 50s, or they inherited it. Now, rent control, that's where you see these crazy stories where you got a $5,000 apartment that's $650 a month. But what more people have, what I have, is rent stabilization, where with each new lease, the city council sets a cap on what percentage the increase can be. Now, the result of this is if you've been in a place forever like I have, you're paying a fraction of the market rate because New York rents
Right.
historically go up so quickly that if yours is going up more slowly, quickly they outpace each other. New York has the greatest tenant protections in the country. You know, conservatives will talk about, well, it distorts the market. I wouldn't trade it, and I don't think most people who have experienced it would. But a distortion of the market that you do get as a result of that in New York is getting a New York apartment is like breaking into Fort Knox. You got to have great credit, or you got to have a guarantor who does. Like, you can't just any other housing market. They don't care because they can get the fucking marshal to throw you out in 30 days. Here, it can take years to evict a tenant because the protections are so strong for tenants. So it's very strange. Growing up in New York City, it's almost like I have certain assumptions that are like I grew up in socialism, because there are these socialist elements that are part of the legacy of when you had this very people-powered New York that have now it's so ingrained in the culture, they can't get rid of it. They've tried. They've chipped away at it, but they can't get rid of it.
Well, of course, what that argument also misses is that the rent stabilization and the rent control actually stabilizes the market in a million other ways. If you had none of that in New York City, you'd have very few people living there, and it would be impossible to buy anything. Who's going to wait tables? Who would live in New York and be able to wait tables in New York? Waiters would have to bus in from an hour away. Who's going to do that? How much would you have to pay them to get them to do that? Which means how much would it cost to go out to eat? Like, the market would be insane in New York. It wouldn't really function without it, because you need working class people to run a city the size of New York. And so without rent control, what you would have are landlords doing essentially what they're doing now, just not as often as they would without rent control, because there's rent control in about 40%, or rent stabilization, pardon me, in about 40% of the units.
Right.
They would just charge through the roof of the apartments. Half the apartments would be empty, and there would be no workers in town to make anything function. And the places that did function would be through the roof expensive.
Well, it would be like how the commercial spaces function.
Exactly.
Where they'll leave them empty for years.
Yeah.
And they'll just take the tax write-off instead of taking a lower price. That's what would happen in the rental market. Now, in New York, you have the rent stabilization, and then 1/8 of the apartment units are actually public housing. 1 in 8 people are living in public housing. So it's very interesting, because New York is like the neoliberal homeworld, but you have these elements of socialism left over from that earlier New York, that the consequences of getting rid of it would be so great that they just haven't.
Right. So once again, Cash App, if you have Cash App, that's his Cash App. If you want to send him some mutual aid, I encourage you all to do so, and best wishes to our pal. Let's talk about a New Yorker who's getting squeezed pretty hard. A New Yorker named Donald Trump.
This is a guy, he needs to invoke his rights under the rent stabilization laws.
Yes.
Letitia James has gone too far, I tell you, too far. All right, so we'll just watch a little video from Reuters to set this up.
Lawyers for Donald Trump on Monday said the former president has so far failed to raise the money needed to secure a bond in his New York civil fraud case. The bond would allow Trump to appeal the more than $450 million he owes in penalties and interest, which a judge ordered him to pay last month for misstating property values to dupe lenders and insurers. Trump must either find the cash or post a bond to prevent the state's authorities from seizing his properties while he appeals the judge's decision. Trump's lawyers urged an appeals court to delay enforcement of the judgment, arguing the amount was excessive. They said Trump had so far approached 30 companies to obtain a bond, but that all have said no. Trump's lawyers included a statement from one of the brokers hired to help get a bond, who said obtaining one for the full amount, quote, is not possible, noting that many companies that issue bonds won't provide one above $100 million and were willing to accept only cash or securities, not real estate, as collateral. Trump earlier this month posted a bond of nearly $92 million to cover an $83 million defamation verdict for the writer E. Jean Carroll while he appeals that judgment. Trump denied wrongdoing in the civil fraud case, as he has in all of his current legal battles, which include 4 criminal indictments.
I'm just going to say that guy is a shitty sketch artist, man. He must have an uncle who works at the network. So it doesn't look like Donald Trump.
No, but it actually looks more handsome than Donald Trump. It actually looks better. He looks like a Batman lawyer, looks like a
maybe they have
DC
a crush on
Comics
Donald
rendering.
Trump.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens now? So the bill comes due on Monday. So this is an NBC News article that broke down what Trump's possible options are here. So how much does he owe? The judgment is over $350 million, and that amount ballooned to $464 million with prejudgment interest. Of that amount, on the date the judgment was entered, Trump is liable for the vast majority, about $454 million. Such judgments in New York also carry an annual interest rate of 9% until they're paid. So the amount Trump owes is increasing daily by more than $111,000.
Wow.
So what's the deadline? And Gorin's ruling was automatically stayed for 30 days after he entered the judgment. The stay expires Monday, meaning Trump owes the money even with an appeal pending. If Trump wants to stay while he appeals, courts in New York require the person or company to guarantee the entire amount. And because of the 9% interest, extra cash or security as well, generally a total of 120% of the award. That is to ensure people don't spend all their money while appealing and then contend they can't pay if they lose. So, yeah, you're understanding that right. That's really a shakedown. So to appeal, you have to come up with all the money in order to appeal, which seems like a perversion of justice, but this is not specific to Trump. This is their policy. The person can either post that amount in cash if they have it on hand, which is what Trump did last year when he filed his appeal of a $5 million defamation award to writer E. Jean Carroll, or post a bond obtained from a bond company. That's what Trump did this year when he was hit with an $83 million verdict in a separate defamation case brought by Carroll. Can he just use some of his properties as collateral for a bond? In their court filing Monday, Trump's attorneys said that they'd approached 30 different surety companies and that very few bonding companies will consider a bond of anything approaching that magnitude. The remaining handful will not accept hard assets such as real estate as collateral, but will only accept cash or cash equivalents such as marketable securities. Now, Trump said in court, most developers have their assets in real estate. They don't hold a lot of cash on hand. He said he has about $260 million in cash. In a response Wednesday, the AG's office said Trump could have used the properties as collateral even without a bond. Quote, if defendants were truly unable to provide an undertaking, they at minimum should have consented to have their real estate interests held by Supreme Court to satisfy the judgment, or should have otherwise pledged security in real estate holdings with sufficient value to secure payment of the entire judgment, the filing said. James also suggested Trump and his co-defendants were playing games because they could have raised those issues earlier. All right, so basically what they're saying is you would sign over your real estate to the Supreme Court and they would hold it in trust pending your appeal. Will Trump have to mortgage or sell off properties to come up with the money? Trump suggested that mortgaging or selling off his properties were possibilities in a post Tuesday on his social media platform, Truth Social. Judge Engoron actually wants me to put up hundreds of millions of dollars for the right to appeal his ridiculous decision. I would be forced to mortgage or sell great assets, perhaps at fire sale prices. And if and when I win the appeal, they would be gone. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't, Donald. No, it doesn't. Bankruptcy protection. One way Trump could stop the clock, at least temporarily, would be to file for bankruptcy protection. It's a move Trump allies Alex Jones and Rudy Giuliani used when they were hit with large judgments, but it could be a bad look for Trump, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, whose political image was built on the perception of his being a savvy businessman. There's also the possibility that declaring bankruptcy could trigger defaults with some of his existing bank loans. And also to mention it, I didn't throw this into the slideshow, but they also mention it's not clear that would free him from personal financial liability, only his companies. So what if Trump doesn't do anything? If Trump doesn't take any action, James would be free to immediately start moving to seize his assets and wouldn't need a further court order to do so in New York, where he's estimated to have hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. His properties in New York City include Trump Tower and 40 Wall Street, a property near James's office that she has suggested she might go after. Financial disclosures Trump filed last year as part of his presidential campaign requirements also indicate he has several bank accounts in New York. Quote, "We are prepared to make sure that the judgment is paid to New Yorkers. And yes, I look at 40 Wall Street each and every day," James told ABC News in an interview last month. Now, Kevin O'Leary has been very outspoken about this, while at the same time making it clear he's not a Trump fan, he's not a Trumper, but as a businessman whose businesses are based in New York, he has really been ringing the alarm on what signal this sends to businesses, because he's arguing this is insane. That what Trump did, present his assets in the best possible light, is something every business person does when they're trying to get a loan from a bank. And also keep in mind, all of the lenders were paid back. There was no victim here. This is purely going after Trump on a technicality, which O'Leary has argued you could go after pretty much anybody at his level of the game who deals with banks on those grounds.
Yeah, not only was there no victim, there was no private plaintiff. It was brought by the state.
It was brought by the state, exactly. So it's clearly, I think we can safely say, did he do that shit? Sure. Is it a political prosecution? Absolutely. Do I think O'Leary is right? I mean, sure. I mean, that's just common sense. Of course, all these guys say, oh, it's worth $1 billion. Right. And then there's a negotiation with the bank on what it's worth, and you get the loan. They paid back all the loans. Like, what case are you talking about? So this is O'Leary talking about the consequences for business in New York and how crazy this judgment is.
You think about America, the reason this is the #1 economy on earth is that we have laws and we have due process and we have property rights. It attracts foreign capital from all around the world. All of that is being shaken to the core here. The concept of seizing assets in 30 days on a bond number that's never been issued. No insurance bond company's ever issued anything near this, so there was no chance it was going to happen. And only giving 30 days notice and time, that's a really bad message. And I think New Yorkers should think well past Trump. Whether he's president or not, or whether this attorney general is gone in 4 years or not, it's irrelevant. This is case setting against the American brand. The most stable country on earth, anywhere, to put capital to work over a long period of time, particularly in real estate, is the United States of America. This is an assault on what we believe to be core. And I find it extraordinary. I think it's very troubling. It has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump at this point, in my view, and it is completely bipartisan. This is an...
Okay, let me just pause it for a second. Okay, theoretically, yes, I agree with his point. Of course, what he's missing is that this actually, in reality, has everything to do with Donald Trump. Like, this isn't actually setting a precedent that they'll go after anyone who does this. No, this is the singling out of a man who they desperately need to keep out of the White House, who's going to win the White House unless they stop him some other way. So I understand what he's saying. He's saying, in theory, you should be afraid that this sets a very dangerous precedent for investment and capital, whatever. In practice, that's not what this is. In practice, they are singling him out and nailing him because they feel they have to.
I was thinking the same thing. And there's another element. I know there are a lot of people that might say, well, I don't listen to people like O'Leary. You should, because he's telling you right now the way the people who actually run things look at shit. So to us, working people, we were just talking about what's happening to JB. America is an extremely unstable place. For the investor class, it's an extremely stable place. Why? Well, all of the things that we decry, the way we send our troops over and exploit people all around the world, our militarism, our imperialism, that is what makes America a particularly desirable country to invest in, because they have a military that will go enforce its will against the rest of the world in order to protect capital. That's what he really means. He's not going to put it that way. But why is America the best place to put your capital? Everything that we're against, these guys are for.
Exactly. So you should listen to him. You shouldn't take moral wisdom from him or political wisdom from him, but you do get a certain truth from a certain point of view that is dominant when you listen to a guy like this talk. All right, let's let this finish.
Attack on America. And I don't know how you can look at it any other way. And as an investor, and I know plenty of investors who are completely disturbed by this, but I mean, no one is going to put any money to work in New York in these amounts until this thing settles down. The whole world is watching, and everybody's waiting for one thing we haven't got yet: adult supervision. Where is it? Where are the adults in this crazy narrative? Certainly there's got to be adult supervision at some point. And I understand, you know, the war going on here and all the political yada yada woof woof woof. But we need an adult in the room now. This is the United States of America under siege.
All right. So speaking for the investor class. Now, as you point out, Keaton, I mean, unless most of these investors are going to run for president and get on the wrong side of the establishment and the deep state, they're unlikely to bring cases like this against the average person. Could it create a chilling atmosphere for people? Hey, a lot of these investor class people are not on the right side of Democrats. So are you going to want to do business in New York State if you're Peter Thiel, for example? Hey, maybe they decide to come after your assets. What if you're a big Republican investor? A lot of these guys in New York are.
Sure. I mean, that's a good point. It sets a political precedent of sorts, I suppose you could say.
That you could go after political enemies for behavior that, look, I've mentioned this before. Theater contract, when I got my first theater, I inherited a contract from the people that I took it over from that was 15 pages, and I thought it was draconian. I cut it down to 3. Over the course of the next 3 years, it grew back to 15. Because what I realized is part of the reason the contracts are written that way is so that you'll always have grounds to take action against the renter. There's always it's unless you have the most conscientious person in the world, they're going to be in violation of something.
Right.
So this is essentially what this does, because again, I believe what O'Leary's saying, that this is common practice. So now you're talking about, well, anytime we want to go after you for what is common practice, we can.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that NBC article mentioned bankruptcy as an option. I think that's his best option. I understand that would not absolve him of all liabilities because there is a distinction between what he is personally on the hook for and what his company is on the hook for. But where it says there, his brand is that he's a savvy businessman. That's his brand. That's not really his brand anymore.
I don't think that would hurt him on this level.
Well, it might help because his brand right now is not that he's a savvy businessman. His brand right now is what?
I am a dissident.
There you go. That's his brand. His brand is that he's being singled out by the deep state because he represents the people and they want to keep the people out of power. And he is the instrument that the people are using to try and seize power from the permanent state. And so if they bankrupt him, that makes him look better. It makes him more of a martyr.
Look what they did. They destroyed a great American business.
I'm so determined to fight for you. I'm willing to let these ghouls bankrupt me, right? That's how he can frame it if he files for bankruptcy. So I think it's the smart move. I don't think it would hurt him. I think it would help him
on that level. The question is, financially, does this get him out of it, even if he does that?
Right. Well, it would get him out of some of it. I mean, it would have to get him out of some of it. Just maybe not all of it.
Does he wind up a schlepper?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Ends up selling hot dogs.
Working for DoorDash.
Yeah, right. Ends up door dashing. Yeah. It says here apartment 3F. Where is that? What side of the building is that? There's no numbers here on the doors.
You see,
why don't they put numbers on the doors?
My buildings were very clear. You always knew exactly how to get to the door.
I put the number right on the door.
Said my deliveries come right to my door.
Yeah, exactly. There's no numbers here. What am I supposed to guess? Yeah, that's how Donald Trump as a door dasher. All right, let's take some super chat. Oh, we got some business to take care of here. We are at well past 666. We have not done that yet today.
Right. Woo.
And we're actually at 666 on Rumble, too.
Damn. All right.
Beautiful. There we go.
And with the left.
Yes. Beautiful.
This is the hand of the Rumble viewership.
There we go. 666 even on Rumble. We do have Jake in the booth today. So a round of applause for Jake. Jake putting in a morning shift, putting in an AM shift today. Round of applause for Jake, please, in the chat. Hobbs45, thanks for the $11. Keaton was killing the game on the Post-Duopoly show yesterday. He's very funny when he doesn't have to read inane super chats like this one. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that was a fun show.
Well, that's true when we do Jimmy's show, too. It's not really that. It's that he's got to run all this backstage shit.
Yeah,
he's definitely at his funniest when he can sit in the back like an archer and just pick off the punchlines.
Yeah, because you can spend 5 minutes nursing a joke, thinking of it. Okay, what am I going to say now? And then you strike. When you have to actually run the thing, your mind is occupied elsewhere. Pat Donahue, 50K subs, brilliant work, lads. Thank you, Patrick. You'll be 100K before you know it. Who said nice guys finish last? Eh? Well, who says we're nice guys?
Yeah, I don't know where you got that from.
I don't know where you got that from, but thank you. Appreciate it.
We are making some changes to the show, though.
Put a ticket in, make her gay.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's our new expedited growth plan. Dr. David Oalalu is a brilliant man in this space and knows things about D.C. and the government. Geopolitics and Conflict show is one of his. Thank you. I cleared out my podcast, my audio podcast library, and now I'm starting from scratch and building another one because I had so many audio podcasts that I never listened to that I was subscribed to. So I cleared everything out, and I'm starting from scratch. So maybe I'll add that one to the list. Thank you. Jay Tolbert, congrats on 50K, fellas. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. We'll go to Scott George. Have either of you two ever intended to fire sign theater? It's good old satire and such. Funny stuff.
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it. I have not, though. But thank you for that. Keep that one in mind, too. Rent should be grandfathered for 6 or 12 months after any sale of the unit. Yeah, they have to come up with something. It's just crazy. It's just crazy that you can tell someone in 60 days you have to leave.
Well, if it's a New York apartment, I mean, I pray for this with this building. When I found out he was selling it, I was praying it was going to get a condo conversion. Because in New York, if you get a condo conversion in your building and it's a rent-stabilized building, you have the option of staying there and renting if you want. You don't have to go along with the conversion. But you get right of first refusal at below market rate on the condo.
Right. Nocturnal Human, thanks for the Rumble rant. Congratulations on 50K on YouTube. I know it's not a competition, but your background in theater like Jimmy's is a huge advantage in you being able to present an entertaining and informative show. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Thank you.
And yes, we do have showman background, so that does help us sort of structure things a bit. You know, having that background does not hurt. Jack Carolyn, 667, the neighbor of the beast. Thank you very much.
All right, that would be a funny animated series.
Yes. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. DC puts James Fauntleroy's Cash App there. Cash App, hashtag SaveJB. Thank you, DC. I noticed you posted that right around the time we got to it, so thank you for that. Very cool of you to post there. Okay, folks, let's go to segment number 2. All right. We've been talking about New York real estate, oddly enough, on this show a little bit. Now we're going to talk about, I guess, Moscow real estate. Here's Tucker Carlson explaining to Chris Cuomo how overseas the architecture is better, which reflects a deeper commitment to humanity on the part of cultures that design their buildings with an artistic human touch. And if you think that went over Chris Cuomo's head, you're probably right. He doesn't talk much in this clip.
He's such a fucking meatball, man.
He's staring at him like, did I remember to put the Schwoyadel in the refrigerator, or is it going to go bad? I got to check on that when I get home. Here's Tucker Carlson.
Spaces are beautiful. The architecture has not been degraded.
Sorry.
The public spaces are beautiful. The architecture has not been degraded by the oppression of postmodern architecture, which is designed to demoralize and hurt you and destroy your spirit. I believe that because it's true.
Do you believe that postmodern archirchitecture is designed to kill your spirit?
Of course.
What's my understanding?
Well, look, anything that we make with our hands. It's
Chris Cuomo's like, man, 40 years ago, I'd have given you a hell of a wedgie for saying that. Yeah. Too bad we aren't on a schoolyard. Too bad we're on camera.
Saying postmodernism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the purest expression of our creativity. So there's a purpose behind everything that we make. There's a message behind all of it, as there is in all art. You don't paint a painting with no vision behind it. You paint a painting because you're saying something. And so buildings that are warm and human and that elevate the human spirit are pro-human. And brutalism, for example, or the IMP glass boxes that crowd every city in the United States, those are not elevating. What's the message of working in a cube in a room with a synthetic drop ceiling and drywall on the walls and fluorescent lighting ahead of you and no privacy at all? What's the message? The message is really clear. You mean nothing. You are replaceable. You are a widget in a bin awaiting assembly. You're just a cog in a machine. You have no value. And everyone kind of ignores this, like, oh, well, that's the way buildings have always been. No, that's not true. And architecture and anything made by human hands is the purest expression of the society that produced it. So we were like, oh, they're handicrafts. No, they're not handicrafts. They're a visible and tangible sign of who you are, not just as a person, but corporately as a society. And if you live in a place that creates nothing beautiful and doesn't provide people uplifting buildings to live and work in, that's a very sick and dark society. And it wasn't always that way.
Yeah. I think he's right. I've never met an interesting person that lives in one of these very modern box apartments with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the uncomfortable furniture. There's what's his name? This just came to my mind. River Page.
It's like the apartment everyone in a rom-com lives in.
Exactly. That kind of thing. Just very sterile, very plain. River Page, I should have pulled this article, but he wrote it so long ago. He's a blogger. He's got a great sense of humor. He wrote a good piece about the sort of banal artistic and stylistic taste of the very people that Tucker is talking about who would live in an apartment like that. He says, if you go into one of these people's apartments, the walls will be white, but they won't call it white. They'll call it Chantilly lace. They'll call it jasmine, even though it's just white, right? Like that's their taste, is coming up with interesting words to describe very boring and sort of inhuman, soulless things. And it's true of residential spaces. It's also true of commercial workspaces, as he says there.
I think that I agree with everything he's saying, and somebody who's done a series of videos about this, who I don't agree with on a lot of things. Paul Joseph Watson has done some very good videos on modern architecture and modern art that basically approach it from this angle. I think what Watson misses and what Carlson misses also, because of their ideological biases, is this is not coming from some kind of amorphous state that, as they seem to want to see it, as something that's coming from top down. It's a natural outgrowth of the premises of neoliberal capitalism. One, the uniformity comes out of mass production and mass society. When they started dealing with larger populations, the capitalist imperative to keep things cheap. Why get stonemasons for the peasants? What do you need to beautify things in that way? When you're oriented around church and state, where you really want to communicate to a largely illiterate population the grandeur of those institutions, well, yes, you want that architecture to communicate the glories and the ideas behind the state and the church. When you're just promoting capital, you're not what. So how do you do that? You just throw money at it, but it doesn't have any core philosophical heft. There's nothing really behind it. So that's part of the uniformity. Now, some of what he's talking about is what's often referred to as starchitecture. Now, that's not because it's stark. The star part is you hire somebody like Frank Gehry, who has this name, because then you can sell these apartments for an outrageous markup to the kind of person who wants to say they live in a Frank Gehry building, which, as you say, is the most boring person imaginable. But part of this, the sterility that he's describing, it's partly that mass-produced quality for a mass population. It's also a lack of a guiding philosophy or value system. Now, a value system doesn't have to be good to inspire. It just has to be. I don't think very many of us would want to adhere to, say, Egyptian philosophy, but it drove them to create the pyramids. That was a reflection of they were inspired to do that. When you have a society with no beliefs other than shopping, you wind up with the Oculus. The Oculus is probably the most significant civic architecture built in New York in decades. That's you may have seen it even if you've never been here. It's the winged, it looks like wings, white building that's at the 9/11 memorial site. It's being used in a lot of movies. If you ever saw John Wick 2, they have a big shootout in the Oculus at the beginning of the movie. Now, if you look at that and you compare it to grand civic architecture of the past, Rockefeller Center, the Grand Central Terminal, the New York Public Library, they all have these references to classical mythology. Now, at that time, why would you do that? Because if you went to Harvard, you got what they called a classical education. So you were familiar with the meaning of these symbols. And if you were a schoolboy, there were no comic books. That was comic books. You read the Odyssey. You read the Trojan War. You read the Iliad. So it was a common vocabulary. So when you saw Hercules, everybody knew what that meant. There was a common understanding of what that was meant to represent. Our common culture today is consumerism. So if you go inside the Oculus, which is supposed to represent the rebirth of the area, that's why it has the wings, very shallow symbolism in my opinion. You go inside, it's a fucking mall. It's an Apple store. It's a Donna Karan. There's nothing, but
there's nothing really in it. It's very spare.
No.
It's very minimalist.
It's just this big open marble space. And that's at best. When you look at this style of architecture, at best, sometimes they'll do some things with the way they structure the space that can be visually striking, but it doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning behind it. It's just when they had to think about, well, what would be a common uniting thing for people to do in this building? Shopping. It's what they came up with.
Exactly. And at a certain point, capitalism creates its own culture. It's a culture that reflects back your capital, right? The degree to which you have ascended within the system, which is all you're trying to signal through the expression of whatever space you occupy, whether it's where you live or where you work, right? Sending that signal becomes most important because the culture has been completely consumed by that motivation. And that's largely what has happened to not just New York, but especially New York. And maybe that's just, I notice it more because I live in and around New York.
It's because of the concentration of capital here.
Yes.
It is especially New York. And because it's not spread out like Los Angeles, everything's packed in. It's all about buildings. Buildings are the natural landscape of New York. Even though if you're in Manhattan, even though you're on an island, it doesn't feel like you're on an island because you never see the water unless you live by it. You're just in those concrete canyons.
That's
all
true.
The time. But another element that is very capitalist, if you look at these starchitecture buildings, no two of them are alike because they've completely broken the principle of form and function, right? Architecture has always been form and function combined. That's what we've considered great architecture. They threw out that unity of form and function because what they're really trying to do is branding. So So the buildings have a sameness to them, but physically they're all very different. You don't have anything like the pediment and the columns. You don't have this repetitive motif, right? Because you're trying to make a Nike swoosh so that the people who buy an apartment in there can say, oh yeah, I'm in that building. And it's not like any other building, but it has nothing to do with function.
Right, exactly. All right, we'll move on to segment number 3. I didn't realize we had such a real estate theme to the show, but the first 3 segments, they're all real estate themed. How do you know that? What do you know about that? That is a coincidence, or perhaps subconsciously there was something going on. What have we said, folks? We have said that while a vote for Genocide Joe is certainly off the table, we have been pushing back against the idea that Donald Trump is any better. Like I said, that's not an argument for one or the other. It just is what it is. So here's son-in-law of former and future President Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, who was a foreign policy advisor under Trump in term 1. Here's his audition to reprise that role next time around. Here's Jared Kushner at Harvard University talking about the opportunities for beachfront property development where, you guessed it, in Gaza. So this is a little piece that Al Jazeera put together on this recent talk that he had.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable to if people would focus on kind of building up livelihoods. You think about all the money that's gone into this tunnel network and into all the munitions. If that would have gone into education or innovation, what could have been done? But I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. But I don't think that Israel has stated that they don't want the people to move back there afterwards.
Yeah. In our spring series of what we are calling Middle East dialogues, which are
Look at that. That's the Negev desert. Yeah. That's where they should go. So if Israel does invade Rafah, which, I mean, it's kind of a strange choice of words. I mean, Al Jazeera is a great outlet, but if the assault on Rafah happens, they've already assaulted it from the air. If the ground invasion happens and nobody can live there at all, ever, this is where Jared Kushner says, yeah, put them out here. Put them out here. Why should they live in a city when we can put them here? Yeah. Does this look like it has the infrastructure to support 1.4 million people? Yeah.
A land without a people for a people without a land.
Yeah. Move them there. Easy, right? That can't be that hard. It's only 1.4 million people. Sure. They already have a city with an infrastructure and a civilization. Here. This looks great. This looks great.
You put a 7-Eleven here. You put a KFC there.
Yeah.
Paradise.
Unbelievable.
Number one, you want to get as many civilians out of Rafah as possible. I think that you want to try to clear that out. If I was Israel right now, I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there.
Companies promotional material about developing settlements in the territory, right on the water. Beachfront property, baby. See, this is how Donald Trump views this. And this is really why Donald Trump likes Israel. I mean, he's not a Zionist in the sense that he has any ideological commitment to the movement. He sees it as this great feat of development of commerce. Look, we took this desert with these backwards people living there, and we built beautiful buildings and beautiful cities, and we could build even more.
People
on this
say
property.
they've never seen anything like it. They've never seen anything like it.
They've done a great job. That's what he says. What they've done there has been incredible.
It's
what
really
they've
unbelievable.
Done means they've built nice buildings. That's what he means by what they've done, and that is reflected in this little puke's comments here. Oh, yeah, no, there's great opportunity here. We just need to move the people out. Where are we going to put them? Yeah, clear out some area in the Negev desert. You're talking about
got
the
a lot
Gaza
of desert
Strip.
over there.
Yeah, this is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. You have 2.5 million people living in a pretty confined space. It requires some like societal infrastructure to support that. You can't just exile 2 million people to the fucking desert so that you can
under a brutal sun.
Yeah, under a brutal sun, so that you can develop this block of land into what you think it could be if it were in the hands of the first world, which is basically what he's saying, right? This should be in the hands of the first world, not these third world. Get them out. Just clear them out, move them out somewhere. Who cares? Desert, whatever. Never mind that they've already have a civilization here. And we can do great things. There's really nice things we can do with this area. That's their mentality. That is the level on which they engage with this. It's not ideological. It's strictly opportunistic. It's transactional. That's the way Trump views everything. It looks like his daughter found the right man. Fits right into the family.
The fact that he's giving this talk at Harvard, which I think most people would consider to be kind of training ground for neoliberals and people with a neoliberal sensibility, people like Ketanji Brown Jackson, who assume the government censorship is good and shouldn't be overly hampered. People like that, Harvard trains those people to think that way. The fact that Kushner is having this kind of a conversation at Harvard, presumably unmolested, nobody's giving him any pushback on what is clearly a ethnic cleansing argument. It really introduces an interesting element of how this all shakes out, because so many of these rabid Zionists are also neoliberal Democrats. And the Democrats, under pressure from a large portion of their base, is feeling a need to moderate their tone regarding Israel, whereas the Republicans are not. Donald Trump is not. So what do these Zionists do? Because these are many of them are very Juliana Margulies. They're the same exact people who put the trans flag in their profile and the Ukraine flag. What do? What do? Do they become Republicans? Do they? Because this is the defining issue for them. And it seems like Democrats are getting more and more scared of the electoral consequences of their position and trying more and more to disown Netanyahu. They're trying to find a way to condemn the killing. So do they just wind up, because Trump just unabashedly, Jews who are Democrats, I think they hate Israel. They hate their religion. I mean, do more and more of them go over to the Republican Party? Do you wind up having this tectonic shift where a lot of these Zionists become Republicans?
Well, to really emphasize what you're saying, I mean, let's all be real here. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, in their heart of hearts, are neoliberal Democrats as well.
Yes.
They're Democrats. They're not Republicans. They play Republicans on TV because their father and father-in-law is the Republican ex-president, future president nominee. They are neoliberal Democrats. They are just saying it unfiltered because they can get away with it, and it doesn't really violate the brand now since they have to pretend that they are conservatives. But they're libs, they're Dems, they are the Juliana Margulies. They're the same exact person, right? Same exact type. And so, the fact that they speak that freely, and you have on offer a candidate that offers them just guilt-free righteousness versus the Democrats who are torturing them, you might see a shift. Michael Rappaport. People act like Michael Rappaport is just arch-conservative now because of all his, ultra-Zionist murderous rants. Michael Rappaport was one of the most prominent never Trump shit libs on social media until this war happened. He's known as a Trump hating Democrat. And even he said just a few weeks into this, I might have to vote for Donald Trump because of this. Right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Because you already have so many weird shifts going on between the parties as it is, like we were talking about on the post-duopoly show last night. The only people on that court who made the argument we have about regulating tech companies and speech, arch conservatives. And I mentioned to Nick because Nick was talking about gun rights, which apparently he's very strongly in favor of. Well, I think we know which party you would go to for that, and it's not the Democrats. Like everything's just breaking down along very different lines than the stereotype.
Yes, indeed. Ski Patsy, thanks for the $10 on Rumble. Funny fact, I know poor people that are for this. Little do they know that if the world lets this happen, ha ha ha, who do you think is next? You're talking about the Trump prosecution? Or are you talking about, what was the other thing we did? Yeah, it couldn't have been the Tucker thing. It must be the Trump thing. Let me know if we're wrong about that. But
I mean, that's why I keep my $445 million in a mattress.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Got to always have an extra $454 million on hand for a rainy day.
That's what I tell my kids.
Yes. Always make sure you have at least $454 million that you can come up with on a second's notice. The sketch artist must have been the same one as Junior Sopranos. Maron. Yeah. Yeah. That was I thought it was a flattering sketch of Trump. He looked like a Batman, character, like a Gotham City bureaucrat type. James Vanderzand, one of the OG dissident fans from back in the audio days. Thanks for the donation. Bernie's back with another imaginary policy. Workers have a better chance of improving our work week through unions and direct labor action post-duopoly. Yeah, his new thing is a 4-day work week, basically, for 5 days pay.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Great idea.
Well, that's what I was saying last night. Like, at this point, yeah, I heard that. I didn't even think of doing it as a segment. Who cares?
Why? Who the fuck cares?
For what?
Yeah.
For what? So he can talk about this shit for a year and try to fundraise off it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Don't take boating advice from O'Leary either. Did he have a boating accident? Is that something I missed?
I didn't know about that.
I didn't know about that. I'm sorry. I probably should get that joke. I'm sure many in the chat do. So sorry if I let you down there. But we got a big chat today, 1566 between YouTube and Twitter, and 803 over on Rumble. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're here on YouTube. Hit that follow button over on Rumble. And if you'd like to support this program, you can do so by becoming a Patreon member. Going to patreon.com/do-dissidence. Perks of signing up include your name up in lights here on our member scroll. You also get call-in access to our post-show question and answer sessions, which are every Sunday night after the main show. Those are done exclusively on Rumble. Paid members have call-in access to those shows. We also do 2 bonus streams per month. Oh, was that it? Was it an accident?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I heard something about that.
Okay. Yeah, I did not hear about that. I had no idea. But yes, you can go to patreon.com and join the show. Like I said, member perks include name in the show credits, call-in access to our Q&As, and 2 bonus monthly streams. We do 2 per month, 2 exclusive shows just for supporters. Those are loads of fun. Those are uncensored Rumble live streams. We do about an hour's worth of content on those streams, and then we take about an hour's worth of calls. So those are really fun, freewheeling, uncensored, interactive live streams that you guys have access to for the low price of $5 a month. So we really try to make it worth your while because we really need people to sign up and keep us going. You guys are the backbone of this program. You guys are what allow us to do now 4 shows a week. These are real work weeks now for us. This is now our full-time thing, thanks to everybody on this scroll here. So if you want to keep us going and keep us afloat and keep us active, DoDissidence.substack.com, Patreon.com/DoDissidence, or you can join our locals. That's DoDissidence.locals.com. Perks are the same across all of those platforms, starting at just $5 a month. If you're watching on Rumble right now, you can click the bright red join button underneath the video screen and join with pretty much a click or two our locals community. Thank you all very much for your support. Let's take a super chat here. Let's do this. So we do have our Give, Send, Go also, if you would like to contribute to our special projects fund. So thank you, Jake, for bringing that up. We're up to $570. We raised $6,000. That got us our first two major projects, which was our New Hampshire on-the-ground primary coverage. And then the big one, the real epic, was Russ flying halfway across the world and covering the Julian Assange Day X hearings. So if you would like to contribute to our special projects fund, you can go to givesendgo.com/do dissidents. Our two major projects this year are going to be the DNC convention in Chicago, which is going to cost some money because that's a 5-day trip. I mean, the convention, I think, is 4 days, so we're going to have to be there for at least 5, so that's going to cost a few bucks. And then we do want to make a post-Labor Day election home stretch trip to Dearborn, Michigan, to do a piece, probably a documentary of sorts, on the Arab and Muslim voters in Dearborn who are boycotting the Joe Biden ticket. So those are both pretty involved projects.
Also, I am going today to look at the theater that we will probably do the live show in. So to start doing live shows, that is another major thing we want to start doing this year. And as I've mentioned, from that, I want to start doing kind of political cabaret nights. Because what I really saw doing the Jimmy panel show in LA is how much hunger there is to get away from the computer and actually meet each other in real life. So these are all extra things that are going to cost money. So if you want to see things like that happen, please contribute. As you know from our track record, we are not schmucks bearing vans. You give us money, we'll actually do what we say we will do with the money.
Yes, indeed. And what do we say? Our goal was about $7,000. We raised $6,000 for the first two projects. We went through all that on those two projects because the New Hampshire one was a little bit of a milder expense because I live driving distance, but obviously the London piece costs some money there. So we're gonna set the goal at $7,000 to get both of these major trips done, plus some live shows because you need to be able to lay some cash out to rent these theaters, and it's not cheap. So if you would like to help us get those off the ground, feel free to chip in. We were able to do the New Hampshire project and the Julian Assange project thanks to your help. You guys are what made that possible. So everybody who signed up, thank you so much for doing that. And we'll have two more major video projects underway with this, plus our live shows that we are going to start up this year. So that's givesendgo.com/do dissidents. Thank you, Jake.
I'm gonna pull this one out. If I said that it was a joke, listen, man, I've driven a horse and carriage in Chicago in the dead of winter. This is not work.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, this is easy, all things considered. Scott George, thanks for the $2. Gaza is the new Southeast Florida. Yeah, to Jared Kushner. Looks about right. Indeed. Tom, guys, don't forget the massive amounts of oil and natural gas in Gaza and the West Bank, which is why Israel and the United States and the West are foaming at the mouth to get that territory free of Palestinians. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, too. And we keep saying we have to look into that more to do like some more structured pieces about that, which maybe we will for Sunday because we'll have a few days to look into things. Since our weekend is coming up, Thursday is our Friday. But thank you for the reminder and for the donation. Not religious, but who's the most likely to be the coming of the Antichrist, Jared Kushner or Gavin Newsom? The omen
Newsom.
as instruction manual,
Newsom.
not script. Newsom. That's what
absolutely
Russell says,
Newsom. You know what's funny, man? Frank Miller, who I guess this foreshadowed it, for anyone who doesn't know, Frank Miller is, definitely one of the three most influential comic book artists of the last several decades. He's the one who did the Batman Dark Knight Returns. All the film interpretations of Batman subsequent to that were very influenced by his interpretation. He did a Daredevil comic back in the 80s that basically predicted guys like Newsom and Clinton that they would be the devil, but they would come off as liberal, but they would really have this very evil agenda. And I think if you went back and read that now, it would read as very prophetic. Like, he had this very, like, Gavin Newsom-looking guy who was actually the beast.
Right.
Who, like, ran on the fact that he refused to go to Vietnam.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that Frank Miller would write that, too. Henry DeShazzo, thanks for the $10. Have you heard the pier is going to be built with fill from the destroyed buildings in Gaza, meaning undoubtedly crushed bones are going in to make it? Buildings and condos and piers on a graveyard. Bastards. Yeah, that is pretty morbid and horrible stuff. Excuse me. Thank you for that donation. Sparky, pardon me. Zionists have been destroying Gaza piecemeal for years, and Palestinians rebuilt it piecemeal. Even with Gaza leveled, Palestinians can rebuild and repopulate Gaza if only Zionists are stopped. Thank you, Sparky. Okay, let's move on. We'll get to more super chats and Rumble rants in a few minutes. Okay, this is a really interesting story. This story, better than any in recent memory, I'm not saying better than any ever, but better than any recent memory, demonstrates how and why the Democrats have lost working-class voters and Republicans have been able to pick them up, despite the fact that Republican populism, quote-unquote, is actually, in practice, quite shallow, right? Because they talk a lot of shit. They still vote for the same tax cuts they always have. But this points to how they were able to eat the Democrats' lunch with working-class voters. Biden judge nominee worked for vulture funds holding Puerto Rican debt. Sparkle Suknanan served as one of Jones Day's lead attorneys for a series of investors trying to maximize payouts from the struggling U.S. territory. So this is a write-up from American Prospect, and then we have some video. A woman nominated for a federal judgeship by President Biden last week served as a top counsel on behalf of Puerto Rican bondholders who sought to maximize recovery of money during the island's debt crisis. Her work inspired other investors to file their own cases seeking money from the struggling territory. Reviews of legal filings show that Sparkle Suknanan, currently a deputy in the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, was lead counsel for a series of hedge funds while working at Jones Day, the large global law firm. Like I said, this is just peak Democrat bullshit. These hedge funds included Altair Global Credit, Claren Road Asset Management, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to read all those. The nomination of a lawyer who literally worked for hedge fund managers trying to squeeze money from an impoverished U.S. colony shows how the Biden administration's expressed desires to diversify the federal bench in terms of identity and life experience do not always move the needle in terms of pulling away from the influence of big law and big money. Lawyers make the best arguments to serve their clients, a valid statement that is often expressed when someone seeking higher office has a troubling litigation record in their past. But Suknanan did eventually reach a breaking point when she showily resigned, not quietly, showily made a big spectacle, resigned from Jones Day after it represented Donald Trump in lawsuits that attempted to overturn the 2020 election results in Pennsylvania. Quote, this lawsuit was brought for no other reason than to deprive poor people of the right to vote, Suknanan was quoted as saying in the New York Times. So Suknanan's moral code was such that there were arguments she was not willing to make in federal court and not willing to be associated with at her law firm. The Prospect asked her if that extended to representing hedge funds seeking money from Puerto Rico. There was no response. Well, she's not under obligation to respond to the American Prospect, but she is under obligation to tell the truth under oath. And so here is Senator Josh Hawley grilling her on this very topic. This is a little bit of a long video, but it's really great. So we're going to play the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Congratulations to your families. Ms. Suknanan,
congratulations to your families. I'm not going to attempt to ruin your life.
I think we've established from the recent lines of questioning that you worked at Jones Day. You were a partner at Jones Day. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
And you had, how long were you at Jones Day?
I was at the firm for 6 years, Senator.
Frank Zappa?
Yeah, Sparkle. I don't know if that's a legal name. I guess it is, right? Because it's on the placard.
It's on the placard. It's on the placard. There's like the name of a brave and stunning woman from a Marvel attempt to diversify comics.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, she is on the civil rights, whatever it was, what the title, I forget.
There you go. Well, I mean, you get that name. Where else can you go?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like Jeeves. You're born to be a butler if you're named Jeeves.
Yes.
You're not going to work a construction site
Sparkle
named Jeeves.
Sukanon, you have to be a brave and stunning woman.
Right.
Series of clients in that time, I imagine. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
That included...
Sorry.
Firm for 6 years, Senator.
Okay. You had a series of clients in that time, I imagine. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
That included a series of hedge funds, global hedge funds. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
Funds like Altair Global, Claren Road Asset Management, Glendon Capital Management, Nakota Capital.
He's reading the same
Oak
article
Tree
we
Capital
did.
Management.
He's got it printed out.
Ochre Rose and Centerbridge Partners. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
And you represented these hedge funds in particular during a debt crisis that Puerto Rico had in 2017. Do you remember that?
Yes, Senator.
So Puerto Rico had a debt crisis in 2017. Your clients had bought a series of bonds and held quite a lot of money in bonds, if I'm correct. And it's $1.4 billion. Does that sound right?
Yes, Senator.
Of course, other people had bought bonds too. Normal people, everyday people had bought bonds. And when the debt crisis kicked off, the courts froze all of the assets, all of Puerto Rico's assets, to make sure that everybody got their fair share and was paid out in accordance with the law, and that normal people who bought bonds would get their fair share, right? I mean, I've got it right so far?
Yes, Senator.
So you, however...
You can tell she knows where this is going because she knows the history. I'll let this play a little more, and then we'll take a quick break for a second.
You, on behalf of your clients, you invented a novel claim. You filed a lawsuit under the takings clause. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So you argued that the government was stealing from the hedge funds by freezing all of the funds, and if they pursued that course of action and didn't give your clients all of their money first, then they would have violated the U.S. Constitution. Is that right?
That's not quite correct, Senator.
Why was it a good idea? Why represent all of these hedge funds trying to get billions of dollars out of Puerto Rico when other everyday bondholders are left to pick up the slack? You dragged this thing out for years. I mean, you went back and forth to the circuit court. Other hedge funds then followed your lead. They thought that was terrific. Terrific argument, super inventive. So then they did the same thing. So then other hedge funds piled in. The bankruptcy went on and on. Puerto Rico was forced to institute serious austerity measures, much to the detriment of their citizens, average people who don't have money for hedge funds. Why is it a good idea to go to Puerto Rico and to try to get your rich clients prioritized over normal people in a way that seriously impoverished, if I might say, the citizens of the island?
Okay, so it sounds to me like what he's saying here is why are you okay to represent hedge funds who are trying to basically skip the line and get huge payouts on their bonds before the ordinary people who may have owned some of these bonds can get paid out themselves, especially as the country is plunged into an economic crisis.
Yeah, her approach to this may have been legally novel, but this is a very typical tactic of big players in the financial markets. It was one of the reasons for the Asian economic crash in the late 90s. Citibank got, I believe it was the IMF, to prop up the currency in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going off memory. I read about this a while ago. And basically they pulled all their investor money out. And once their investor money was out, they let the currency crash.
Right. And so there he is sort of laying out the case. And now he goes further.
Senator, the legal profession is bound by a code of ethics that I think is incredibly important and that I am proud to adhere to in every case. My clients in that case...
Take from the rich or take from the poor to give to the rich? Is that the code of ethics?
Senator, Jones Day was retained in that case to represent a group of clients. Along with my colleagues, I made the best possible arguments.
Well, wait. Are you saying it wasn't voluntary? You represented him, right? You were lead counsel, I thought. Were you lead counsel?
Senator, I was not lead counsel. I was one of many lawyers who handled that litigation.
And it was involuntary? You were assigned, or you chose to do it? You did it voluntarily, didn't you?
Senator, those hedge funds were a client of the firm. I was asked to join the team and work on that matter.
But you did. Okay. My question is why? Why is that? Why is it a good idea? I mean, you can say no.
Senator, my colleague Zanaya Jones-Day in that case made the best possible argument.
Well, I know, and I listen. I don't doubt I'm not questioning your talent. I understand why they wanted to hire you. Your talent's considerable. I'm just wondering why you thought it was important to deploy it on behalf of these hedge funds to the detriment of everyday citizens who were bearing the cost. And you invented it was very novel. Listen, I give you credit. And everybody else thought so too. That's why all the other rich players got in and said, we want to do that, we want to do that, and drug it out for years. I'm just wondering why you thought that was a good idea.
Senator, Jones-Day was retained to represent
I heard
those
that the first
clients.
time. I'm just wondering why you
Listen, I was just doing my job.
Considerable talents in any number of cases, ways, means, and methods. You could have said no to representing these clients. You didn't, obviously. In fact, you vigorously defended them to the point of inventing this novel theory, which was quite successful for your very lucrative clients. I'm just wondering why.
Senator, I have represented a number of clients over the course of my career. I have represented the government. I have represented clients.
So you don't have any problem with this? You think this is a good idea? You stand by it?
Senator,
No
my
regrets?
job in that representation was to vigorously represent my clients, which I did.
Sure.
Right, but your job was to defend Donald Trump in the election case, but you chose to quit that and make a big show out of quitting that because that crossed a moral red line. So the question is, if that crossed a moral red line, why did this not cross a moral red line? And you know that the stories match up because the American Prospect would not have made this exact same argument if this weren't the right argument, because they are not a radical publication. They're like an Elizabeth Warren adjacent progressive liberal outlet. They're pretty blue no matter who at the end of the day. Like, they would not be writing this. They would not be making the identical argument to Josh Hawley if this weren't very obvious. If the sort of moral shallowness of what she did were not very obvious, because as the write-up says, she didn't just quietly quit that Trump case. She made a big show of it. It's a big virtue signal because politics to these people is all a virtue signal. It's just cost-free virtue signaling. If she can make a big show of the fact that this is an offense to our democracy, and I can score points with the libs who hate Trump by making a big show of saying, I will not represent Donald Trump.
That's why she's sitting there as a nominee.
Exactly. That's why she's sitting there as the nominee. When it comes to helping hedge funds skip the line over ordinary people on an island nation that's in a debt crisis, sure, we could do that. That doesn't violate the moral code of the rich liberals who give her these jobs. So sure, that's the point. The point is not that you're in breach of some ethical or legal code. The point is you choose to draw a moral red line when it comes to scoring brownie points with liberals for sticking it to Trump. But when it comes time to screwing the ordinary people of this land out of basically debt relief, at the end of the day is what that would function as if it were doled out according to either need or just fairly according to who's first in line. Yeah, sure. That's fine. That's fine. A gig is a gig in that department, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is typical ruling class ethics.
Right.
Everything that benefits your elite ruling class is within bounds, particularly in terms of economic benefits, status, power. But there is a drive. This kind of, Richard Dawkins gets into this on another level, the God gene, right? I would say there's a moral justification gene. There are very few people and no classes of people that are comfortable living without a worldview. They need some moral justification for their actions. And they find that moral justification in these virtues of manners, which is also very typical of an elite class. That right. You are not behaving as a gentleman, sir. Right. It's that kind of thing, but it's empty. These same people will go massacre an entire tribe, right? And come, this is not befitting a gentleman, right? The Southerners were famously genteel, even as they brutalized a slave population. Right. This is the ethics of a ruling class. It's an ethics of manners rather than substance.
Indeed. All right, let's let this play out.
But we'd established, I think, a second ago, I thought you told Senator Kennedy that you resigned from Jones Day over a client that the firm was representing who you didn't like.
Senator, that is not at all what I said.
You didn't resign from Jones Day?
Senator, I did not resign from Jones Day because of any particular representation.
So it wasn't a moral, you had no moral quandaries?
Absolutely not, Senator.
You had no moral quandaries with any of the cases at Jones Day? That's your testimony?
Senator, I left the firm in January of 2021 because I was offered an opportunity to return to public service. It's an opportunity the firm supported and that I took.
You had no quandaries with them representing in the Trump litigation. You had
Senator,
no problem with that. That's your testimony.
Senator, I did not leave my firm because of that representation.
You had
I
no
left
moral
my
problem with
firm,
it.
Senator, I left the firm months later because I received an opportunity to
You
return
had no problem
to
with
public
that, and you had
service.
no problem representing the bondholders. So your testimony is you're happy to represent anybody who comes your way. Donald Trump, you bet. The bondholders, you bet. Hedge funds, you bet. Whoever. That's your testimony? I just want to make sure I got it right.
Senator, throughout my career, I have adhered to the code of ethics that all lawyers are bound by.
Well, sure, but the code of ethics allow you to make money from anybody. Listen, you can choose your clients. I'm not accusing you of any ethical violations at all. I'm not. I'm just trying to figure out why you thought it was important to have these hedge funds as your clients and if you had any moral quandaries. And your testimony is you didn't have any moral quandaries, which is fine, but I just wonder if that's the best judgment.
Senator, throughout my career, I have represented corporate clients.
Yes,
I have
we know.
represented criminal defendants.
No. Okay, so final point
and
on
that's
this.
a very lawyer's tactic.
Well,
to just
obviously.
keep repeating and not
Well, she
breaking
can't
any
perjure
ground.
herself by saying
Right.
she didn't have a moral objection to, her firm representing Trump in January of 2021, which would have been when that happened, or that case may have been brought the month prior, because she said I was offered a career in public service months later. So whatever the exact timeline of that is, she obviously can't say she had no moral objection to representing Donald Trump, since she obviously does. That's on the record, right? And so, final point on this, because I know some people in the chat are saying that Hawley is a hypocrite. Yeah, sure he is. Sure he is. But this is how the Republicans have made inroads with working class voters. Because when you promote nihilists like this woman, who are happy to help hedge funds loot Puerto Rico, but put on this big thing about how Donald Trump's challenges to the 2020 voter over a moral red line. Well, how do you think that plays to the ordinary person? How do you think that plays to the ordinary person, especially when it falls to a guy like Josh Hawley, who, yeah, he votes for all the tax cuts. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Hypocrite, absolutely, 100%. But it falls to him to prosecute a case like this, where he obviously just has her in shambles, just repeating these very lawyerly non-answers, not able to make a case for why she was okay to represent one case and not okay to represent the other one based on just political, I don't want to say gamesmanship, but it's a completely partisan thing, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. The saddest thing to me are people who are, office managers who cling to these kind of elite ethics as if that makes them elite. That's the most pathetic thing in the world to me. At least this woman is living in one of those brutalist architecture monstrosities that Tucker is describing.
Right.
You freaking what? You're making $50,000 a year. You think these people give a fuck about you? You think you have anything in common with these people? You think by reflecting back their high self-regard at them, they're going to look favorably on you? They don't even notice you exist, except as the slave that carries their litter. That's how they see you, the voter, the people who turn out for their events. We're probably going to do something on this. We were looking at this. Pod Save America, top price on seats, $750 fucking dollars
for their live show in Brooklyn. Yeah,
for their live show. Who are these people? Who the fuck are these people? I'm going to go there and I'm going to ask them, and I'm going to pull a Weiss. I'm not going to yell at them. I'm going to be very subtle.
Yeah, he's going to go outside and interview the people who are in attendance there.
Oh,
No, we're not buying it.
We're not paying for that. No.
Don't worry. Your Give, Send, Go
not.
donations will not go to Pod Save America.
No. I won't even be able to take that. Like, that'll be just too painful for me.
Yeah, right, exactly. You'll be like Jose.
I can't sit through that.
I'm not sitting through this Mad Al book reading. I'm just going now.
Exactly.
Samuel Bruce, Russell's neck has to be sore by now from all that head banging. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. How's your neck feeling? He seems to get pretty good.
I'm all right.
To me. Yeah, Russell does meditation every night. That probably keeps your neck nice and loose.
I do meditation. I do yoga too.
Yeah, so meditation and yoga keeps the shoulders and the neck nice and loose.
Yeah.
SB, is there any way to convince Trump to drop Israel? It's hard to tell if the country will continue to support Israel. The youth, the left, and parts of the right are opposed to Israel. Your thoughts? It's too difficult for him. I think he's too lazy. Honestly, I mean that's where I see it. If it becomes politically expedient to do so, maybe there's always the X factor there.
There's always the X factor.
There's always the X factor with Trump. I mean, you never really know because he's not locked in. He's not joined at the hip with the kind of interest that a lifer like Biden is. But I mean, I wouldn't count on it. Because it's still a mainstream position within his party. And don't forget, Trump, for all this talk about how, the Republican establishment was out to get him, part of what Democrats did to Trump as soon as he took office the first time was they drove him into the arms of the Republican sort of standard managers, right? To the point where he didn't really challenge them on any policy. Like he didn't even read, I would be shocked if he even read the healthcare bills that they were trying to pass to repeal Obamacare. Yeah. He just went to bat for them because he needed them because he was under siege from the other side. Right. So the Republican Party, right, that party brass that he ran against in the primaries that year, they became his wall against Democrats who were trying to impeach him and throw him in jail. And so they really sort of forced his hand to govern like more of a standard issue Republican than he probably wanted to. That's probably why he sent arms to Ukraine. I don't think he wanted to send arms to Ukraine. It's just that he was being investigated as a Putin puppet, right?
And also in terms of the politics of it, going back to what we were saying before, he's a lot more likely to win over Zionist Democrats than he is to win over the uncommitted Democrats.
Exactly, yes. That's a good point, too. So you have people like Michael Rappaport who are just coming out and saying, hey, if the Democrats appear to be too soft on Israel, which how ridiculous. I mean, this is what Karens these people are. Biden, who's done everything they've asked him for and has covered for crime after crime after crime. Now they have it in their head that he's working against them because he's asking them publicly to take it easy, right? Yeah. Like, this is how sick
maybe not
they
kill
are.
So many kids today.
Right. Maybe don't kill so many kids this week. Exactly. And they think of that as some, like, slight to them. And so, yeah, there are some ultra-Zionist Democrats who may be thinking about voting for Trump. So as a matter of political expediency, that's a good point. He might see more of an inroad with them than of the uncommitted who are committed to not voting for anybody.
Right. And it's very unlikely you could talk them into voting for Trump.
Yeah, extremely unlikely. Certainly if his son-in-law is running around making statements like that. Like if he wanted to make an appeal, and look, you're not going to catch Trump with a free Palestine button anytime soon. But he could do the thing that he did with Ukraine, which is, this isn't our fight. We're not funding this anymore. This is crazy. We need peace. Too many people are dying. It has to stop. He could just do that. I think that would be the political winner, honestly. But I don't think he's going to.
Well, then he's going to have AIPAC coming for him.
Because then you have a big problem in your own party. And the political war that's going to take place down the home stretch of this campaign and into his second term, assuming he wins, is going to be 10 times more intense than the first one. And he's going to feel like he needs to remain in good standing with the Republican Party because that apparatus is going to be his defense structure
them to hold
against
the
Democrats
who are trying to put him in jail in check.
Exactly. Maria Cummings, you guys are terrific. You should have far more than 50K. Keep it up. Congratulations anyway. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
We've been hearing that since we have 500.
We have been hearing that since we've had 500. So 50K, we are happy with that for now, for sure.
We're not complaining.
Not complaining, but thank you. And yeah, hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 100 by November. Election day, 100K by election day. That'll be our goal.
100K or bust.
100K, yeah. Newsom Kushner 24. There you go, Sparky. Okay. Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Okay, I've read your thing, Luis de la Cruz. All right, no sweat. Thank you. That's fine. It wasn't that bad. I just didn't want to read it when she was here, but that's okay. Thank you. I appreciate the writing. I won't read it at your request. Predator, thanks for the $2. Read that out loud. Oh, you're a troublemaker because you knew he didn't want me to read it out loud, so you said read it out loud. All right. All right. No sweat, Luis. Choosy heretics choose Carnation Revolution now. Exile Big Brother editor answer blowing in my name. Okay. Interesting. All right. Thanks for that. Bit of a cryptic one, but we'll take it. I call BS, says Nina. Josh Hawley's my senator. He don't give a crap about working people. He'll be running for president in 2028. His name is Josh Hedge Fund.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, no argument there. No argument there. But you create opportunities for them to posture in that way.
Well, I mean, Trump is the greatest example of that. What? Trump's a friend of the working man?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Man, he's I'm if you're from New York and you grew up where I grew up, where you know a lot of contractors, I've been hearing since the 80s he doesn't pay his contractors.
Right. Crab Eaters Real, loving the commie rep lately between Tusker and Dr. Shaw. Both fantastic interviews. Love to see one of the other Midwestern Marks guys, Jody Brar, Garland Nixon next. Yeah, that would be great. And yes, thanks to Danny Shaw yesterday. If you missed it yesterday, you missed a great show. We were on Rumble exclusively yesterday. So subscribe to our Rumble channel and go back and watch that stream. We'll be dropping a ton of clips from that show on YouTube over the next day or two. So you'll get to see most of it in clip form. But if you want to catch the long form interview and all of our segments in our show, subscribe to our Rumble channel. That was a great show yesterday. That was I thought a very strong one. And yeah, he was a great guest.
It was. And he's here in New York. You know, we're building a little network of radicals here in New York. That's part of what's really cool about these live shows. As we build them, we can bring a lot of these people in to be part of that.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, he was a really, really good guest. A really great guy to talk to. Very real, very authentic guy. Yeah, that was one of our strongest episodes in a while, I thought, from my point of view. Gents, congrats on your continued channel growth. Thank you, Ron Katie. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go to a segment that is inspired by Russell's Louisiana trip. This is a topic that is very undercovered by everybody, not just in mainstream press, but in this space as well. So let's dig into this a bit. Go ahead.
All right. So fans of the show, you know, I have certain things that really get my attention, right? So Boeing is one of those things, which I've managed to, I think, do my small part to elevate that before it became as big a story as it is now. I was pushing that story pretty early on. Transgender medicine in children, I was pushing that pretty early. This is something I'm ashamed that we really haven't given as much time to as we should, because I'm as passionate about this as I am about those subjects, and I am making some plans to give more time to this issue of mass incarceration. This is also one of a three-parter that I'm going to do on Louisiana. The final part is going to be about the Confederate Memorial I visited, complete with pictures that, if you've never been there, you're going to be shocked that something like this exists today in the United States. But let's talk about Louisiana. Louisiana's over-incarceration is part of a deeply rooted pattern. A recent U.S. justice... Okay, so now this article is from a year ago, just to give you some background on the situation there.
Yeah, because the news piece is that they just passed this horrific new crime bill. Yeah,
yes,
like this month, yeah.
But just to give you an idea of the context in which they dropped a bill like that. A recent U.S. Justice Department report on a decade-old practice in Louisiana of deliberately keeping people in jail for months, sometimes years past their release date, reads as though officials are actively working to reclaim the mantle of world's prison capital. All right, so let me explain that very quickly. All right, so because the United States has the most incarcerated people per capita of any country on earth, Louisiana had, until 2017, the most in America. So it was for a while the place where per capita they had the highest percentage of their population incarcerated on earth. In 2017, they passed some reforms aimed at decreasing the prison population and taking some of the savings and putting it into rehabilitative programs. And it did work. It did save them some money. But now in their wisdom, they've decided essentially to reverse that. So that's what that means. Louisiana had the highest incarceration rates in the country over the last decade by fairly wide margins. The state's population is roughly 62% white and 33% black, but those numbers nearly flip behind bars, where 34% of inmates are white and 64% black, almost double black people's representation in the general population. Let me take another pause here, because I know very often you hear figures like that and people say, oh, the South. Listen, man, I've been to jail in New York plenty. Usually I'm the only white dude in there. So that's not a Southern thing. That's a prison system thing, no matter where you go. The state, dubbed the world's prison capital in a 2012 investigation by the Times-Picayune, among other news outlets, now holds another dubious distinction. It is the only jurisdiction in the U.S. known to systematically keep people in jail well past their release dates, even though officials have been made aware of those violations of the Constitution and human rights for more than a decade, according to the Justice Department's January 25th report. That's 2023. At the same time, Louisiana is remarkable for its use of the forced labor of incarcerated people. In Louisiana, mostly black prisoners pick cotton at gunpoint on former slave plantations. Yes, you heard that right. You are on actual former slave plantations. They have cleaned up the 2010 BP oil spill, have staffed prison rodeos where vulnerable inmates are charged by a bull for public entertainment, and have cleaned and cooked meals in the state capitol. Last year, residents in 5 states voted to remove constitutional language that allows forced labor as punishment for crime, but Louisiana was the lone holdout. Taken together, Louisiana's mass incarceration practices reflect the deep roots of racial bias and the exploitation of black labor in U.S. law enforcement. Indeed, those who wish to prolong Louisiana's system of unpaid slave labor have said as much, describing it as a necessary evil, quote, similar to the claims made 200 years ago by plantation owners, legal scholar Michelle Goodwin observed in a 2019 Law Review article. Goodwin is a professor at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. Jumping ahead a little, since at least 2012, more than a quarter of the people set for release from the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections custody each year are instead held past their release date, a violation of the Constitution's due process protections, the Justice Department said. Between January and April 2022, 26.8% of people released were over-detained. A quarter of people. Can you imagine? You're in prison for years. You're looking forward to that release date, and they just keep you for months.
Yeah, or
in
years.
one case, years.
Yeah.
Louisiana also spent at least $850,000 reimbursing local jails for housing state prisoners during that period alone. The practice of sending some state prisoners to local jails is unusual. Now, the article also implies that that's part of the reason they don't fix it. There's a financial incentive to keep these people over incarcerated because they get paid for each prisoner. One state inmate was imprisoned 960 days past his release date, the New Orleans Advocate reported in February 2019. 3 fucking years. Can you imagine that? 3 fucking years.
According to the average lifespan, that's 1 in every 25 days. Extra.
Roughly 800,000 incarcerated people work in prisons nationwide, and they produce more than $2 billion a year in goods and upwards of $9 billion in services, most of which benefit state officials and government budgets, according to a 2022 report by the University of Chicago Law School and the ACLU. At times, officials around the country have said openly that they can't tax citizens enough to replace the value of forced inmate labor. Some private companies that use prisoner labor have also stated openly that it's just easier and cheaper to use a captive workforce without benefits and virtually no rights, according to a July 2022 investigation by the Arizona Republic. Now, I think, I have this handy. So this book, if you don't have it, is really worth reading on this subject. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander really gets into how essentially after the civil rights era, you get mass incarceration, partly in order to take away the political rights of all these newly enfranchised blacks to get them out of the voting system. But also, they restored the slave system.
Yes.
Through the prison system. They just recreated that system.
Yeah, because don't forget, a very small minority of people in jail have actually been found guilty of hurting another person. It's almost all drug offenses or people who have not even been found guilty yet. They are awaiting trial because they're too poor to get out before trial.
Right. They need the workers. They need the labor. This is something. What was it? It was the AP did this huge article on prison labor. We were going to have the journalist who wrote it on, which hopefully we'll still do. Where was that now? Okay. All right. So it is in this context that the new Republican governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, just signed a series of draconian new crime bills under the premise of the usual victims' rights and, hey, our economy is bad because of all this crime. And we'll get into that angle as well. So Louisiana on Tuesday became one of the toughest states in the nation on crime when Governor Jeff Landry signed a series of bills that will keep criminals in prison longer, enable citizens to carry guns without a permit, and resurrects the electric chair and adds nitrogen gas to lethal injection as methods used to execute death row inmates. Quote, "We all know the statistics of how poorly Louisiana ranks in safety, and we all complain about the outward migration that has been going on in the state consistently decade after decade. It's just logical that people will not come to a place where it's not safe," said Landry, a conservative Republican, adding that crime costs the citizens of Louisiana's three largest cities, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Shreveport, $6 billion a year. Among the laws Landry signed is one that clears the way to end a 14-year pause on executions in the state. Under the new law, nitrogen hypoxia will be added to the available execution methods, along with the reintroduction of the electric chair, which death row inmates dubbed gruesome Gertie. More on that in part 2 on Sunday. Executions by electrocution was retired in Louisiana in 1991 when the state moved to lethal injections. Landry also signed into law legislation that will allow people to carry concealed weapons without a permit or training. You know, it seems to kind of contradict the whole cut down on crime thing. You know, this is a state, and particularly in New Orleans, if you follow the New Orleans news, shootings are just fucking constant. It's just constant, man. And it used to be in the outer areas. Now, even within the touristed French Quarter, you get these shootings right on Bourbon Street all the time now. So this is a great idea if you want to cut down on crime. The law also makes Louisiana the first state to grant concealed carry license holders a degree of qualified immunity from lawsuits if they use their weapons in self-defense, a provision currently reserved primarily for law enforcement officers. The law will also lower the age for a person to carry a concealed firearm from 21 to 18. Gosh, I feel safer already. You know, I don't even know why I came back. It's like paradise. Landry also signed into law 2 bills that he said will ensure convicted criminals serve the majority of the sentences they are given, and that will eliminate the option of parole for convicted perpetrators. One of the pieces of legislation Landry signed, the Truth in Sentencing Bill, would require an inmate to serve 85% of their sentence before they can receive a sentence reduction for good behavior, and reduces the amount of time by which a sentence can be reduced. The other bill eliminates parole altogether for anyone convicted of a crime after August 1st, 2024. So they're getting rid of parole if you don't get it grandfathered in by having committed a crime before August. So listen, man, if you're going to commit a crime in Louisiana and you want parole, you've only got 5 months left.
Yeah, what does that say? That sends a real great signal. That's the kind of thing you'd either want to do immediately or not at all, right? To put a deadline there kind of seems like you're perverting the incentive a bit. But look at that. They would have to serve 85% of their sentence before they can receive a sentence reduction for good behavior, and also reduces the amount of time by which it can be reduced.
They use that to inspire people to want to not rock the boat while they're in this horrific circumstance.
Right. So what if you're in your 50s and you get sentenced to 15 years and you figure, well, by the time I'm out of here, I'm going to now what? Now I'm going to be at least 67 before I get out of here.
Right.
Right.
Right. So why not stab this guy? He stole my pudding.
Right. Exactly.
Fuck this guy.
Right.
Fuck the 15%. The governor is expected to sign more bills later this week. Among them is one that will lower the age at which a minor can be tried as an adult to 17 for all felony crimes. The law will also make juveniles convicted of first-degree and second-degree murder, first-degree rape, and aggravated kidnapping ineligible to have their sentences modified. Under the same law, juveniles convicted of lesser felony offenses will have to serve at least half of their sentence before sentencing changes can be considered. Additionally, the legislation will, for the first time, allow some juvenile records to be made public. Okay, so this is really, Louisiana is increasingly turning into a dystopian hellscape where you take the worst ideas to come out of American conservatism as reflected by Republican dogma and put it into action. It has some of the strictest abortion laws in the country, which I got to tell you, man, I was in New Orleans before the pandemic and I've been there twice since the pandemic. And yeah, it's had an impact, man. New Orleans was a town of sex and drinking. You don't want to get drunk and knock somebody up in that town.
Yeah, it's like the bizarro Canada now.
Yeah.
The upside down Canada.
That was a very good way to put it. Now, typically with these tough on crime measures, they would rather mass incarcerate people, which, as we saw from the first article, is profitable for them. They want the labor force. And again, I'm not trying to beat up on a southern state and say we're more enlightened in the North. Kamala Harris, when she was the Attorney General of California, argued against releasing prisoners because they needed them for the wildfires.
Yeah, they make them fight fires for $1 a day, right? Is that what they paid them? Yeah.
Yeah. So this, I'm not trying to say this is a southern thing exclusively, but Louisiana is a very extreme example by the numbers of this mentality.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, there is a certain evocative quality to forcing black prisoners to pick cotton at gunpoint.
Sure.
Yeah, like there's no real escaping that.
Sure. I know in the North we like to pretend racism and racial injustice is a Southern thing. Mm-hmm. So when covering something like this, I just want to be careful to point out, hey, man, I've been to jail in New York City plenty of times. I am literally like the only white person in the cell every time. And New York is not 99% black and Hispanic.
Yeah, people can't believe this. It is unbelievable when you learn it. For firefighting, yes. Yes.
And that's your liberal. That's your liberal. That's your Democrat. Her AG's office argued that. So the legislative analysts can't put a price tag to all of this, but the designating illegal use of a weapon, a crime of violence, that's going to cost the state $14,300,000. Increased jail terms for carjacking, about $1 million. They say minimum this policy is going to cost the state $32 million. Now, Landry has responded to that in the debate by saying we can't put too high a price on crime. But apparently, I would argue, I would submit to Governor Landry that maybe part of the problem isn't that they haven't put enough money into crime, it's that they haven't put enough money into anything. Louisiana ranks number 50 by U.S. News and World Report of all states, number 50 to live in. We have, we have 50 states, right? So that would make it the bottom. That would make it the worst state in America to live in.
Yes,
right? Number 50.
That would be last. That would be considered last place.
Okay,
yes.
So in crime and corrections, it ranks number 50. In economy, it ranks number 50. In education, 46. Fiscal stability, 38. Healthcare, 45. Infrastructure, 49. Natural environment, 49. Sportsman's paradise, right? It's a sportsman's paradise over there. Now, that might partly be because of the region they call Cancer Alley, where they have so many chemical plants releasing poison into the environment that the surprise, mostly black population there has exploding cancer rates. And Opportunity 48. So, hey, man, do you think maybe that's why you have these crime rates? And maybe if you fix that, it would bring people into the state? Do you think people are going to want to come to the state if you lock up more people, but you have a terrible... Who wants to bring their kids to a state that ranks 46 in education? How are you going to get tech companies, for example, which all of these states vie for? They're not going to move there because their employers are not going to want their kids going to school there. They're going to have to send their kids to private school. New Orleans, you know, the whole public school system was turned into a charter school system. Is what I'm saying. This whole state is like all the worst ideas in one place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Just a preview of part 2. We're going to do a little bit about the electric chair that they're talking about bringing back, that right now is in a museum. And they're literally talking about taking it out of the museum and putting it back into service. So we will cover that next time. And also video that I shot of people who are activists against incarceration, mass incarceration in Louisiana, who held an event. So we will see that footage on Sunday.
Yeah, no, look, these tough on crime bills are easy sells in a way, because you're appealing to the fears and, you know, needs for vengeance among a population, right? And when you look at those data points there, I mean, how many of these factors here contribute to the actual crime rate, right? If you had an economy in better shape, maybe you wouldn't have as much crime. If you had more accessible health care, right, you would have a less desperate population that didn't turn to crime more.
Right.
Education, look, I'm a college dropout. I reject the fear-mongering that the alternative to education is incarceration. That was what my guidance counselor had in her fucking office. Like, I reject that. At the same time...
Oh, you're still young.
Yeah, I'm still young. At the same time, I'm not going to argue that stronger education doesn't decrease the likelihood you'll end up in jail. I don't think it's good to scare kids with that binary, because then if they're having trouble in school in a city like Newburgh, where I grew up, they might think, well, falling into a life of crime is a foregone conclusion because I suck at school, so I may as well just turn to this life now. That's the effect that has on a lot of young people when you scare the shit out of them in that way. So I'm not for that. At the same time, yeah, bolstering your education system, of course, is going to bring down crime overall.
Yes, and also in terms of Louisiana specifically, because I was really looking at making it maybe someplace I spend part of the year, so I really did a deep dive into it. Part of the reason the state is so impoverished is not they don't have industry; they have enormous industry. They have the oil industry in Louisiana. They have refineries in Louisiana. Because their legislature is so bought off, they don't tax them. You have these enormous oil companies paying $1,000 in taxes on their real estate that they take up. This is why the state is broke. There is plenty of money. There is plenty of industry. They just don't tax them properly. So, and it's not like when you're talking about oil companies, it's not like you could say, oh, well, they're going to go to Mexico. They can't. The fucking oil is there. They can't go anywhere. You can tax the shit out of them, but they won't do it.
Right. Indeed.
So that is really a caricature of the tough on crime logic. You got a state with crumbling infrastructure, with lack of economic opportunity, lack of education. I think the problem is really we don't have enough people in jail.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's like it appeals to people's sense of justice and vengeance and retribution, right? It's an emotionally gratifying way to address a problem that causes people a lot of legitimate fear and anxiety. And that's why it's very powerful. It's powerful when Republicans do it. It's powerful when Democrats do it. That's how Bill Clinton became president.
Right.
Yeah. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Just following orders. The trains run on time. Sparkle El Suknadan, probably. Yes. Thank you, Sparky. Everything I say is a lie. I'm lying. Thank you, Scott George. I get that. That's a nice, what do they call those? I forget what they call it, but one of those logically contradictory riddles. Hey, Russ, who do you prefer, Paul Di'Anno or Bruce Dickinson?
Come on, is that even a question?
Yeah, I think that must be pretty obvious. Abiding, thanks for the 99 cents. Appreciate that super sticker. Sparky says Trump's not a big reader. He lets people of questionable character and agendas brief him. Maybe his biggest flaw. That probably is up there with his biggest flaws.
Sure. What the fuck? Am I still on? Hey, chat, tell me, am I still on? It said, I think I'm still on. So that was just Keaton, right?
That was just me.
What the hell was that?
It's super.
I thought the stream ended for a second.
I did too. You know what it is? It's super windy here. So that may have fucked with a Wi-Fi thing because my Ethernet just cut out and it switched to Wi-Fi. So I don't know. Am I coming through okay now?
Yeah, you're fine.
Audience, good. Yeah, I had a feeling that might happen because it's like 40-mile-an-hour winds consistently here all day. So sometimes that fucks with the power or the Wi-Fi or something must have happened out there. It's wilderness now, man. Crazy out there. Okay. $1 Million Trooper, hedge funds pay the piper, and Sparkle. There you go. Thank you. His Highness, did you guys remember to shout out the homie JB Fun? Yes, we did. Whose landlord is taking his home. If so, another shout out won't hurt. Cash App, James Font Leroy. Yes, here. I'll prove to you I'm not lying. Where the fuck is it? Where is it? Why is it nowhere? Oh, did I delete the thing? I'll put it up again at the end. But yeah, well, there it is. I'll have it right there. The $sign James Font Leroy.
Yeah, he showed it.
That's the link. He showed it. Yeah, that's the Cash App if you want to help our friend JB. And hopefully you guys did that already because we showed that right at the top of the show. So we want to put that right at the top so the people who watch it on the replay see it. Since most of the views on these come on the replay, even though we do have a very good crowd today. 1710. Oh, where's Jake? Did Jake disappear? Jake's not here anymore. Where is he?
NSA got him. NSA.
What happened? Did he have a power thing or was it just me? Like, you didn't have to sign back in, Russell, right?
No.
You stayed here.
That's how fast it takes for a guy to get whacked.
Hey. Yeah, where is he? That's so weird. I don't see him here anymore. I don't see the Rumble things coming in anymore. That's kind of bizarre. Okay. All right. Well, we hope Jake can make his way back.
I hope they didn't Boeing him.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. App. Let me see if I'm missing anything. Okay. All right. Beautiful. All right. We'll see. Hopefully this works. Yeah, that's bizarre that he's gone. Why?
That's very strange.
How did that happen? I mean, maybe it's an internet thing. I mean, he's pretty far from me. He's Western Pennsylvania, but we're the same region. But then again, so are you. But in New York, everything's underground, so it can't get to it. It can't get knocked out that way.
No, we never had that.
Russell's safe from the high wind. He's in a windproof zone.
In Manhattan, it happens in Queens.
Yeah, exactly. Back from the road, Gil Scott Heron sang about Angola in 1980, and it still rings just as true. 50 years without progress in our prison system, it's slavery.
It's worse. It's worse than it was in 1980.
I found out about the prison wages when I was in 12th grade. I was a senior in high school, and I took a forensics course. That was my science course for the year. And one of our field trips was to the county jail. And they told us, about the wages that they pay. And I forget exactly what it was, but it's something like 30 cents a day, for their labor. Yeah. That is fucking slavery, especially if you got people in there who haven't been convicted of anything, right? And then most of the people who have been convicted of something, it's a bullshit drug charge or whatever.
Yeah, man. And hey, it's cops. This is something that people who haven't been arrested don't understand. Once the cops have you in their hands, they have a lot of latitude on what they want to do.
Of course, yes.
Like last time I got arrested, it's been a while. You start getting the grays in your hair. They don't fuck with you as much. But last time I got arrested, man, they rushed me through because I knew how to game them, man. I signaled like, yo, I'm a director. I have a tech rehearsal tomorrow. You know what that said to them? He's a PMC, and this is a mistake, and we got to get him through the system. And It worked. They got me out in 12 hours. But I was in there with a dude, because when you get arrested, at least the way they work it in New York, you go through progressive cells. You got the first general lockup, and the closer you get to seeing the judge, you get to a smaller and smaller group. So when I got to the last cell before you see the judge, a guy who clocked me when I came in was like, yo, how the fuck are you in here, man? I've been in here for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And not supposed to leave you in there for 2 weeks. He said some shit that pissed them off, and they fucked with him, man. They fucked with him. The cops said when I got arrested that time, they said right at the beginning, this is something you've never been arrested. You'll never see this side of cops and the shit they will say out of you. They go, hey, you know how the cops lie? We can do the same thing. We could lose your file behind a cabinet. You'll be in here for a month. So you give us any trouble, you remember that.
Right.
I guess that guy gave him trouble.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Sparky, DeKalb County, Georgia keeps people in jail for at least a day before allowing bail to keep the average jail population up in order to maintain federal funds, offsetting DeKalb's shrinking population. Wow. Okay, folks, we have one more segment on the morning before my internet cuts out for good. Let's try and get this one in. Report, featured in antiwar.com. Thanks to friend and supporter of the show, Eric Garris, for sending this my way. Emailed me this piece yesterday. This is by Dave DeCamp. A plea deal could free Assange from prison. Justice Department considering plea deal for Julian Assange. Since we covered the Day X hearings, we kind of feel a responsibility to make this one of our beats, where there's a development in this story. We really got to cover it. So this is a write-up based on a Wall Street Journal report. So the Justice Department is considering, the Justice Department is considering whether to offer WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange the opportunity to plead guilty to a reduced charge of mishandling classified information, the Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the matter. The report said DOJ officials and Assange's legal team have already had preliminary talks on what a plea deal might look like. However, Barry Pollock, a lawyer for Assange, said he has been given no indication that the department will take a deal. Quote, it is inappropriate for Mr. Assange's lawyers to comment while his case is before the UK High Court, other than to say that we have been given no indication that the Department of Justice intends to resolve the case, and the United States is continuing with as much determination as ever to seek his extradition on all 18 charges, exposing him to 175 years in prison, Pollock said in a statement. Consortium News reported later in the day that it had previously learned of the talks between the U.S. and Assange's legal team on a potential deal, but the information was given off the record, so the outlet did not publicize it. Under the DOJ's indictment against Assange, he could face up to 175 years in prison under the Espionage Act for exposing U.S. war crimes by publishing classified documents leaked to WikiLeaks by former Army private Chelsea Manning in 2010. If Assange is convicted, it would set a dangerous precedent for press freedom, since publishing information obtained by a source is standard journalistic practice, whether classified or not. The Wall Street Journal report said that if the DOJ offers a deal for Assange to plead guilty to a lesser charge of mishandling classified information, like Joe Biden, next to the Corvette in the garage, it would be a misdemeanor, and he could potentially enter the plea remotely without going to the U.S. His time in London's Belmarsh prison, where he's been held since April 2019, would count toward his sentence, and Assange could be free shortly after reaching the deal. While such a deal could potentially secure Assange's freedom, it could still set a dangerous precedent since it would criminalize the relationship, of course, yes, between a journalist and his source. Kevin Gosztola, author of the book Guilty of Journalism, The Political Case Against Julian Assange, suggested the U.S. could have leaked the talk of a plea deal to the press to portray Assange as unreasonable if he didn't take it. That makes sense that it would happen off the record in that way if that's their motivation. Basically, U.S. officials chat to the press about some possible plea deal for Assange when he isn't guilty of any crime. If Assange's team signals it would never be acceptable, then it is Assange's fault that he remains in prison. Officials can say he wants to martyr himself, Gosztola wrote on X. Last month, Assange's legal team presented its case for an appeal to the UK Home Secretary's decision to extradite Assange to the US, and a decision on whether or not he can appeal is expected to happen soon. So, a report of an off-the-record comment made that the DOJ is considering offering him a plea deal, so it would not exonerate him, while it would end the torture and send him home, which is a great thing. It would also accomplish their goal, in my humble opinion, of setting a very dangerous precedent regarding press freedom. It kind of gives our government a kind of off-ramp, a kind of compromise where they get the best of both worlds, because on the one hand, they get to set an example that, hey, we can criminalize journalism going forward, whatever we want. This would give them an opportunity to make that point without actually torturing a man to death and turning public sentiment sour on them. That could be where they're coming from, too. Maybe they want to offer him a plea so that they get the conviction on the books. Hey, don't any of you other journalists get any ideas about printing what we don't want you to see, without the PR nightmare of actually killing this guy in jail.
That is my belief. The 4D chess version, oh, well, we just want to put it out there so they'll look unreasonable. Maybe. I don't say that's
you
not
never
possible.
Know, of course, yeah.
But it makes more sense to me that it's an election year, and Biden would like this off of his neck. He doesn't want this drumbeat of they're torturing a journalist to death. And as you say, God forbid he dies.
Well,
God forbid he dies. They don't give a shit if he dies. They don't want him to die before November.
Right. Exactly. And that's what his wife says is likely to happen if he is extradited. She says this is life or death, and that he will die. That's what she said. He will die if he is extradited to the U.S. He's in very, very frail psychological and physical health as it is. And we are expected to hear fairly soon whether or not he will be extradited. And so if this happens between now and November, that's just yet another nightmare for Joe Biden. And obviously it's a human nightmare for all of us, but we're just talking, from their point of view, obviously. I think they would like to get this case on the books. They would like to get it on the record that he is guilty without taking it to the visceral extreme in the public mind of actually torturing the man to death. That's what I think their motivation is there.
Well, I think you're right. That's a win-win for them.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with this shit anymore, and you've established a legal precedent that you can't do what he did, or we're going to come for you and torture you to death.
Exactly. And, whether or not Julian wants to take that deal, I've had no judgment either way. That is up to him. That's up to the family.
No one who hasn't been where he's been can judge that.
Right. Nobody can judge that. Nobody can judge that whatsoever. So whatever's right for him and the family is what they should do at this point. Okay. Thank you guys very much for being here today. We're going to take a few more super chats and rumble rants before we close the lights on the stream. Long story short, what's the name of the good bagel store in Nolans?
Okay, so I found two, man. Okay, so you got one on Ferret Street, Humble Bagel. That was very good. The only thing I will say is They overdo it with the cream cheese, but that's easy enough to fix. But the bagel itself is good. And Stein's, there's a Jewish deli on Magazine Street. I didn't try any of their other stuff because I felt like, I mean, I'm in New Orleans. What the fuck am I going to eat Jewish food for? Like, I got that coming out of my ears back home. So I didn't go beyond the bagel. But the bagel was good. Both of those places, Stein's and Humble Bagel.
Nice. Excellent. All right. Odon R. I'm going to read this one. I can't put the whole thing on the screen because there's a word there that we're not supposed to say in East Berlin. But good article on Louisiana. But the little dig at constitutional, read permitless, concealed carry is not well taken by this particular gun nut. Yeah, I know. I knew that was coming. Fair enough.
I knew it was coming too, but come on, man. Hey, my view on that, as with a lot of things, is nuanced. I have, throughout the time we've had this show, I have actually made the argument that the conservative notion that the population being armed is a defense against the government. I buy it. So I'm not to the extreme on the other side either.
No, I buy it too. And so, yeah, I'm nuanced too. Because it's one thing to buy that. It's one thing to accept that. On the other side of it, you can't pretend that that comes with no cost, right? You can't pretend that point of view does not come with a price to be paid, right? There's cost and benefit to every policy, right? So just because you like a policy on balance doesn't mean it comes cost-free.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to be like Europe or now Australia, where really, like, you can't have a gun. But, yeah, I mean, I think we all agree on background checks and waiting periods and... Really? I mean, is that a big deal?
Bonzo Beans, I'm still here. Thanks, Bonzo Beans.
What's up?
Alrighty, everybody. I still don't know where Jake is. I have to find him. Because let's keep it saying. Thanks to the $4.99 super sticker.
He wasn't testifying in any aviation trials. Was he?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, he didn't come back in when I came back in. When I came back in, I noticed he was gone. So maybe there's something having to do with that. But in any event, folks, we are about to close the lights on this live stream here. What a week. How many shows did we do in the last, 6 shows in 4 days? Is that what we did? Something like that. Quite the schedule this week, but we had a lot of fun with you guys. We hope you guys had a good time with us here. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Jake, in the booth or not in the booth, wherever you are. I'll find you. I'll track you down somehow after we're done here. Thanks to our Rumble audience. Thanks to our YouTube and Twitter audience. Once again, if you would like to support JB, $James Fauntleroy is where you go and do that. And like I said, we displayed the link earlier in the live stream. So that would be awesome if you could help him out. And please subscribe to the channel. Follow the channel on Rumble. Oh, no. I thought Jake was in the chat, but that's Bonzo Beans posing as Jake. I'm Jake. MI6 got me. Haha. Faked me out there. Alrighty, everybody. We will see you back on the main show, main channel, all of our platforms, Sunday nights. That is Sunday, March, whatever it is. I don't know what the hell the date is. What day of the week is Sunday? 24th. I want to wish my boys, Beckett and Sawyer, a very happy birthday tomorrow, which I'll be here for, but I'll say that on the air. And we'll see you guys all Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, all of our platforms. Until then, be safe and be well. Thanks for this morning.
Courage.
Please clap.